I cannot wish away a difficult neighbor. I mean, that is the reality, however unpleasant it may be.
Sir, since independence, Indian foreign policy has moved from a phase of hyphenation to dehyphenation with Pakistan. But some recent events suggest that some degree of rehyphenation. So how do you see it, and does it indicate a gap between our policy intent and diplomatic outcome?
Yeah, Chetan, you were going to ask a question. Some other Chetan intervened.
Thank you, Professor Mattu. Thank you, Minister, for your very insightful speech. I am Chetan Rana. I'm a final year PhD student working on foreign policy of populists. My question is, like you emphasize a lot on neighborhood in your speech, right? And you talked about how the world today is very complex, but India's neighborhood has been a challenge from times of Nehru to today, right? The nature or the forms of those challenges have changed, but it has been a challenge. So my two-part question is, one, how do you evaluate the success or failure of neighborhood first policy, considering the reality that neighborhood will always be a challenge? And B, can India rise while not being able to accommodate India's neighborhood properly?
Look, the first question about hyphenation. Now, we have multiple neighbors. Some are clearly better than others. And the hyphenation normally happens with a neighbor who's not so nice. Now, you have to understand, when we say dehyphenation, that means it's our objective and our approach that decisions made by third countries about us are not made keeping that relationship as the lens or as the factor of calculation or factor of primary calculation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they would accommodate us. I think you will always see attempts, to balance us off, or if there is a situation, to use that situation for their own ends. That is the competitive nature of international politics. From our perspective, the best way of dehyphenation is frankly to outstrip the other party in terms of power and capability. And today, I can tell you as a person who travels, meets people, I've just come from a UN session. The kind of equivalence that I would hear when I joined the Foreign Service, when I left JNU and entered the Foreign Service in the 1970s, Ambassador Sybil would vouch for a decade before that. Nobody talks like that anymore, So I cannot wish away a difficult neighbor. That is the reality, however unpleasant it may be. But what I have to do is to make myself impactful enough and in a way attractive enough that the relationship is primarily one which is based on my own capabilities and my virtues and my contributions. And I think that is broadly happening. So the neighboring case will keep trying, in a way to intrude into that conversation and try to carve out a place for themselves. In a way, extrapolating on that for the neighborhood first. Look, neighborhood first, first of all, let me say one thing. If you ask any country in the world, including any big country, neighbors are always challenging because they are neighbors. That there will be, issues with neighbors which you will not have with countries who are one layer or more removed. So it's not as though India has problematic neighbors. Every country has problematic neighbors. Every big country has more problematic neighbors. Now, when you have a policy, the purpose of a policy is not to solve a problem. The purpose of a policy is to manage relationships to your national advantage. Now, the whole idea of neighborhood first was one, to give our neighbors a certain primacy, a certain priority of attention. Number two, by attention here means giving resources, giving a kind of a political energy, which was not there before neighborhood first came into being. I mean, if you look today with any of our neighbors, I mean, barring one, if you look today at the projects, look at the, energy grids, you look at the roads, the rail, the movement of people, I mean, it is actually the last decade has been transformational. Now, the thinking behind neighborhood first is if you create enough of a basis for cooperation in which both parties have an interest, that then serves as a stabilizing factor. So even when you have change, even when you have a great disruption, there are countervailing stabilizing factors which address that. And I would argue that in many cases, the changes that we have seen in the last few years, the consequences would have been much sharper had actually this cooperative basis and the infrastructure mostly underwritten by India had not been there. And your point about accommodating neighbors, yes, we do try to accommodate neighbors. In fact, we do more than accommodate neighbors. If you look at the kind of support we extended to Sri Lanka during its economic crisis, or the kind of support we gave even today to the Maldives, or what we did during COVID, or the kind of fuel and fertilizer supplies that we gave after the Ukraine conflict started. So we have gone, as my remarks I said, we need to become the go-to country because we are the largest, we are the common neighbor to the entire region. But that doesn't prove, it against other, interests that they may have, positions they may take. So we can accommodate them to the extent our national interest allows them to do so. Where our national interest requires otherwise, we have to deal with that as well.